In week 8, we're going to be taking a look at simulating a river using the FLIP solver. FLIP stands for Fluid Implicit Particles, and this is essentially a hybrid solution that uses both particles and some volumetric fields and solving to drive this liquid behavior here. And you can get some fluid-like behavior out of a more basic pop particle simulation. So if I drop in a DOPNet, go inside there and type pop to see some of our various pop forces, you can see there is this pop fluid option. And if you just want some more basic fluid-like behavior out of your particle sim, where these particles kind of try to stay stuck together and behave in a vaguely fluid-like way, then sometimes you can get away with just using this pop fluid with a basic particle sim. But if you want to create a more complex and realistic effect, like this flowing river here, then using the FLIP solver is generally much better suited for the task. And the nice thing about the FLIP solver is that this only relies on carrying a set of particles from frame to frame or substep to substep in our FLIP solve, but this does use some volumetric fields and computation to help drive this nice liquidy flowing behavior. So essentially, on every frame of our FLIP solve, we have this set of particles, and these particles have a velocity. You can see if I display the velocity trails there. And this is the only information that FLIP needs to carry over frame to frame, or substep to substep. And then on each substep of the simulation, the solver will convert the velocities of all of these particles into a volumetric field for that velocity, and it'll do kind of like a pyro smoke simulation, some fluid calculations to compute a new velocity, taking into account these high and low pressure areas. And after doing those volumetric computations, then it'll transfer those new velocities back onto the particles. And it is worth noting that these pyro simulations, whether we're talking about this density sim for the shock wave or proper combustion like the explosion and fire, these are all forms of fluid dynamics. You might think to associate fluid dynamics with a liquid instead of gases, but gases are driven by what we refer to as fluid dynamics. And if that's a bit confusing to wrap your head around, don't worry too much because we'll get into this a bit more step by step as we build up this simulation. But I just wanted to give you a rough overview of the general principles of the FLIP solver before we start building the simulation. And we could go ahead and start building up this close-up simulation first, but when you know that you have wider versions of the shot, it's best to work on those wider versions first. Because once we generate the wide version of this shot, then we can go ahead and chop out a section of this to use for the close-up shots. Now for the close-up shots, you'll need a lot more resolution than you do in the wide version, so you'll need to do a little bit of work to crank up the resolution and do a new sim on one segment of your wider FLIP sim, and we'll take a look at that later as well, how you can just take a portion of this simulation and then rerun that at higher res. And keeping in mind that general overview of how FLIP simulations work, let's go ahead and start setting this up.